Hey math kids, today we are going to talk about the equation of a line. We're in section 1A in your book, and the first thing I want to tackle is the concept of slope. Now we're not going to get too much into the concept because I think you have it down, but the issue with this book is that they won't call it slope. They're going to call it gradient. So for example, our first example asks for something in gradient intercept form. Now previously, so in the class you had before this, it was probably referred to as slope-intercept form. And all that is y equals mx plus b. Okay. We also came across point slope form, which is now called point gradient form. So it's not too bad, but this is the y minus y1 equals mx minus x1 equation. So just remember, anytime you see gradient, switch it to slope and you'll be fine. So on this first problem, they tell us that our gradient, or slope, is equal to -3, and it passes through the point 4, -5. So since we are given the slope and a point, or the gradient and a point, we're going to use this equation. So we just plug it in. This is going to be our y1. This is going to be our x1, this is our m, and we just plug it into here. So y minus -5 equals -3 times x minus 4. Now, it specifically asks to put it in slope-intercept, or y equals mx plus b form, and so to do that, we need to simplify and solve for y. So right here we have negative times negative, so that's going to be y plus 5. And then we want to distribute the -3 right there. So we get -3x plus 12. And then we just have one more step of algebra. And we subtract 5 from both sides. And we end up with y equals -3x plus 7. Okay, that's in the right form. Same thing the book got. So we should feel good about that. Now we're going to move on to example 2, and example 2a gives us this equation, y equals -2/3 x plus 2, and it wants us to write it in general form. So general form, which you may have heard it as standard form, but it's going to be just like ax plus by equals c. And so we need to get our x and our y on one side, and then any remaining constants on the other side. So if we look at the original equation they give us, that means we need to add just this piece over onto this side. So we're going to get y plus 2/3 x equals 2. And we see that it fits that form. Our a would be 1, our b would be 2/3, and our c would be 2. Now, another part that the book is going to care about, and technically we should care about as well, is that our a and our b need to be integers. So we have 2/3 for this one. And so we want to undo that fraction. And to do that, we're going to multiply everything by the denominator. So we'll multiply everything by 3. So right here becomes 3y. This 3 cancels this 3, and so we get 2x, and then we have a 6. And so that's the real standard form, or general form, that they're looking for. Okay? There's a part b to this. So 2b gives us 3x minus 4y equals 2, and they want gradient intercept form. So I'll just say grad int form, which remember that is slope intercept form, or y equals mx plus b. Okay, so the important thing to focus on when you're trying to get something in slope-intercept form is that it is solved for y. And so we want to keep this here and then move this over here. So to do that, we're going to subtract 3x from both sides. So we're left with negative 4y equals negative 3x plus 2. And then we're going to divide everything by negative 4. Okay, those cancel. We're just left with y. The negatives will cancel here, so we'll have 3/4 x. And then positive 2, negative 4, that's going to end up being a negative quantity. And then 2/4 will reduce to 1/2. And that is our slope-intercept form. Once again, the book calls it gradient intercept form, so try to get used to that terminology. Okay, we're going to move on to example 3. And example 3 says, find in general form the equation of the line with gradient, so slope of 2/3, that passes through negative 2, negative 1. And once again, this asks for general form. Okay, so because we're given a gradient and a point, we have to use point gradient form, which once again is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So we plug that in. So this is my y1, this is my x1, this is my m. So y minus a negative 1 equals the slope, and then x minus a negative 2. So the first thing we want to simplify are these double negatives. So negative negative means positive, negative negative means positive. Okay. Next thing we need to do, we need to distribute 2/3. So we still have our y plus 1 over there. 2/3 times x is 2/3 x. 2/3 times 2 is going to be 4/3. Now, we have to look back up here. It wants it in general form, so that's the one where it's ax plus by equals c. So we need our a and our b on the same side. And then we want any constants, so anything without x and y in it needs to be on the other side. So I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides to get my constants on that side. And at the same time, I'm going to subtract my 2/3 x because I want that on the same side as my y. So we do that. Those cancel, and we're left with y negative 2/3 x plus y. These cancel. And right here, we want to think of this negative 1 as a negative 3/3 because it needs to have a common denominator with the 4/3. So if we have 4/3, negative 3/3, that leaves 1/3. Okay, with general form, we need our a and our b to be whole numbers or integers. And so since we have a fraction right here, we need to multiply everything by the denominator. Okay, so this 3 cancels this 3. We're left with negative 2x. 3 times y is going to be 3y. And then the 3 and the 3 cancel. And so we're left with a 1. Now, another thing that the book is going to want you to do, I'm not too particular about it, but they're going to want this leading one to be, this leading coefficient to be positive. So since it's negative, the one with the x, we're going to divide everything by negative 1, and we're going to get 2x minus 3y equals negative 1. And that is your general form of that original equation. Okay, we're going to move on to